This movie not only has one of the best love stories in American film history, but has one of the most iconic scenes in American film history. That story and more up next. Hi, welcome to Retroflix. This is your channel for TV and movie retrospectives. Today we have a teen romantic comedy that became really a cult classic. It didn't really do that great at the box office. It was only like 55th in 1989 for the year-end receipts. It made a modest $4 million. It actually had a pretty good big budget, but it really made its mark after that in the 90s and even the 2000s, starting with HBO, which is where I first saw it. I did not see it in the theaters. I didn't even know it was in the theaters. I knew nothing about this movie until I saw it on HBO, probably in early mid-90s, when it was on heavy rotation there. And I really just loved this movie. I just thought, even though it was a teen comedy, it was different from the teen romantic comedies. It was different than the ones that were made in the earlier and the mid part of the 80s. And it just really had an adult and a mature sense about it, and a just substance that, and not that the other movies wouldn't be good, but this had a substance to it that made it different as far as I was concerned. And of course, it had an iconic scene too that you just can't forget. And in fact, that scene almost didn't happen, or didn't happen in the way it would have made it iconic. And we'll talk about that later. The movie that I'm talking about now, I mentioned the year 1989. This movie is Say Anything. Say Anything was developed by James Brooks and Cameron Crowe. Now, Cameron Crowe was a journalist and then got into Hollywood writing. He wrote a part of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which was a very big success, and also The Wildlife. And so he had some writing credit there. So James Brooks, who was a producer, actually came up with the premise of this movie. And James Brooks, where he got this from, he was watching a younger woman, on the street being helped by this older man who it looked like that was the father and the daughter. And the father was really doting on her and taking her by the arm, making sure she's getting across the street. Like, they're still very protective, even though she wasn't a child by any means. But still, you could see just how protective still he was of her. And James Brooks looked at him and said, I wonder what would happen if he had a secret life. Like, he is so protective and doting of her, and you can see he's really cares for her. But what if he has this other life where he might be a criminal? And that made him start to think about a movie that he could do. He went and talked to Cameron Crowe, who he knew, and him and Cameron Crowe devised a plan. James Brooks had Cameron Crowe write a 90-page novella and interview high school kids and interview people at a rest home to shape this idea he had. And one of the ideas he had too was he was looking at first at the father, and the name, which ended up being the name in the script, which ended up being the name in the movie, was James Court. So James Court would be the father, based on that guy and the thought he had of that guy that was helping his daughter across the street, like the very protective, doting but very protective, and somebody that would have another life that she wouldn't know about it or anybody else would know about. And that's what James Court is going to be. Now he's going to have, then the daughter is going to be Diane Court. And they start talking about that, and actually Cameron Crowe had a problem with Diane Court. He didn't know what to do with that character, how to make her. And he eventually decided he was going to make the Diane Court character like his mother. So Diane Court is based on Cameron Crowe's mother, who was an overachiever and graduated from high school early. So that is going to be the basis of Diane Court. And so who is going to now he's like, okay, now Diane Court is going to have somebody that's going to be smitten with her. a boy that's going to be smitten with her. They're going to be in the same grade. They're going to be about to graduate. This boy's going to be smitten with her, but it's going to be from the other side of the tracks. All right, somebody from the other side of the tracks, particularly something that James Court wouldn't want his daughter to associate with. Somebody that he would not want her to associate with. He would see her when she is going to be with a guy, and not then when she has to do all of her studies and her education, but when she's going to maybe marry somebody in the future, be with somebody in the future, it's going to be somebody that's going to be more higher, echelon than what this character would be in James Court's view, and maybe in Diane's as well. Although she's really taking cues from her father. The teen is going to be named Lloyd Dobler, and Lloyd Dobler is based off of a neighbor of Cameron Crowe's who would come over to Cameron Crowe's house at night all the time while Cameron Crowe is trying to write, and would disturb him and would come in and talk to him about kickboxing and how his father got in trouble with the IRS, which will be put in that movie. And if you watch that movie, you'd see that. But Cameron Crowe was really impressed because this guy still had this optimistic view, and still thought things are gonna work out, and really had this mature view of things. So even though he just liked kickboxing and his dad was in trouble with the IRS, and that's he still was fine with everything and optimistic. And this really impressed Crowe. So, and this guy's name was Lowell. So he changed it to Lloyd, and so Lloyd Dobler was going to be that role. And so he was looking at. Let's talk a little bit about cast now. If we're looking at the cast, Lloyd Dobler is going to end up being John Cusack, and John Cusack he actually had a lot of success already in the '80s with One Crazy Summer, Better Off Dead. He was actually in 16 Candles, and then of course later down the line had a really successful career. And doing movies like High Fidelity and a slew of others, The Raven, I think he did, and just a lot of wonderful movies that he did. I think Grosse Point Blank he did as well. He was actually also did a cameo in the Stand By Me movie in 1986, which would have been about 3 years before this one. The Diane Court character would be Ione Skye. And Ione Skye, this is one of her big major roles. She would end up doing another movie called The Rachel Papers, and she was actually in Wayne's World, the first Wayne's World, too. So, and she's actually still working to today. And so she's actually the daughter of the singer Donovan as well, which is interesting. And actually ended up marrying, he ended up marrying for about 7 years, married Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys. So just some trivia about Ione Skye. And then James Court would be played by John Mahoney. John Mahoney had really started his career late in life. He was almost 40 years old when he started acting in theater back in Chicago, and then was kind of a character player in movies. And then he got a role on the sitcom Cheers in the last year or two of the series, and met Kelsey Grammer, which changed his life, because then when Kelsey Grammer got the Frasier TV show after Cheers, a spinoff of Cheers, basically. And he had got to know John Mahoney, and NBC really liked John Mahoney. I mean, he was known because he had done some movies and stuff too, and did really well. But he got him into that. He got him into that to play his dad. And so, if you ever seen the sitcom Frasier, Martin Crane character, that's John Mahoney. So that's kind of what those three basic characters looked like, and the casting of them. And actually, something else real quickly too. The sister of Lloyd Dobler in the movie, because Lloyd Dobler lives with his sister. Lloyd Dobler's family, he's an Army family. His parents are out of the country, so he's staying in the States in Seattle with his sister. His sister is actually played by Joan Cusack, who is John Cusack's real life sister. Let's talk about the iconic scene in this movie. Now, as the movie goes on, again, I don't want to get too much into it, because if you haven't watched the movie, I don't want to ruin anything. All right. So, but as the movie goes on, Lloyd and Diane obviously are in and out, and there's a conflict. There's a lot of stuff going on with her father and so forth, but Lloyd still tries and tries after her, right? So they are together at one point, but then she breaks up with him and he still tries. So anyway, we go to the iconic scene on this, and this is Lloyd's last ditch effort to get Diane Court to come back to him. And in this scene, he gets a boombox and puts it up over his head. He is parked across the road from her house, and he plays a song that was playing when they were first intimate, when they were going out together, that was playing in the car. So they actually had a different song playing in the movie when Lloyd holds it up and plays it, so that Diane can hear this across the road from her house while she's in bed sleeping. But hopefully she's not sleeping and hearing what Lloyd is playing. There was a different song and shot, and after in post-production, Cameron Crowe said, "This is really not the song for this scene. We need another one." And he remembered that there was a great love song, like a slower song, that Peter Gabriel did in his 1986 hit album So, and it was called "In Your Eyes." So he got a hold of Peter Gabriel and said, "I'd like to use that in my movie. Here's a rough cut of the movie so you can watch it and see if it's something you would give us permission to use that song in." And Peter Gabriel then watched it and sent a note back saying, "This is a very personal song of mine for me, so to have it in such a depressing movie, I don't think I can do that." And Cameron Crowe was taken back. He was like, "But this isn't depressing. Like, what's he seeing?" So he got a hold of Peter Gabriel again, or his people, and explained to him, so I'm not sure what the miscommunication here is. Well, he ended up finding out that Peter Gabriel thought that movie was a movie called Wired, which is, at the time they weren't called this, but it was basically a biopic of John Belushi, the comedian and actor who died of a drug overdose back in 1982. The movie is called Wired, and for some reason I don't know what Cameron Crowe could have gave him Peter Gabriel, that he would thought that any part of Say Anything was like Wired, but that's what happened. And so once that got smoothed out, Peter Gabriel was like, "Oh, okay," and gave permission for them to use "In Your Eyes" in that song. And I think "In Your Eyes" was integral to that scene. If it was anything else, I'm not quite sure. I mean, John Cusack holding a boombox there, but I think that particular song played such a pivotal role. I don't think that scene would be iconic as it is if it wasn't for that song. And that's maybe just my opinion. I don't know if others share that, but that's certainly the way I feel. It was a song about perspective. And the perspective here was Lloyd wanted Diane to see that he wasn't from the other side of the tracks. He was a lot the same than she was. There wasn't really differences between them, not as many as she thought, or her father had kind of put in her mind that there was. That just, it wasn't the case. And I think from Diane's perspective, she ended up seeing that, he isn't from the other side of the tracks. We're really the same here, because I've got issues, and everything, and really Lloyd is somebody that I could really trust. When she finds out that she really couldn't trust her father anymore, Lloyd was really the only male that she could trust, and that he really is a good person. And we're not that different. We're not that different, particularly from what my father's been telling me. And I think that's what that portrayed in that. And it just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful movie. There was just real quickly, there was a story back in 2012, I think it was. And if anybody out there is from Los Angeles, there's an amphitheater called the Hollywood Bowl, where they had concerts. Well, Peter Gabriel played there, and John Cusack came on stage and gave him a boombox and bowed and went off. And Cameron Crowe was there and was like, "I can't believe I just saw Peter Gabriel and John Cusack on the same stage." So just a little bit of a story there. If you've seen this movie before, please comment below and tell us what you thought of it. What are your memories of this movie? If you haven't seen it, go and take a couple hours out and check it out. There's numerous places that you can get this movie. It's for rent, and it's typically for about $4. But right now, it's at rent at Redbox, Vudu, and Amazon Prime Video. If you have a subscription, you can see it at Spectrum, Paramount Plus, MGM Plus, Sling, and Epix, I believe it's on. And also, too, it can be bought, if you're so inclined to buy it, you can buy it on Apple TV. So if you haven't seen it, go somewhere like that if you can, please, and see this movie. I think you really enjoy it. But if not, that's okay, too. But however you think about it, come back, comment about it. Thank you very much for being here. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, that's a wrap.